I would like to take a moment before we get into today's main episode and to talk about my sponsor for the podcast. Podmatch is a new podcasting site dedicated to all podcasters. The platform helps hosts get connected with potential guests to appear on their show, as well as allow guests to find podcasts that will give them a chance to share their story. Podmatch offers many tools to help organize your page, from to-do lists to episode planning to potentially appearing on a leaderboard. Podmatch has it all. The best part, you have the potential to get paid. And who doesn't like to get paid from home? I like to. With an easy sign up, you can start connecting with podcasters and guests immediately. I have been a part of Podmatch since the beginning of May, and I have got to say that it was the best decision I've ever made because Podmatch helps your podcast grow. It helps you get connected with people that have very interesting, very compelling background stories that are just waiting for their story to be shared. So if you are a host or guest and would like to start building professional relationships, explore more opportunities, and have your story shared, I highly suggest that you sign up with Podmatch today by going to joinpodmatch.com/lethal venom to start expanding your network in seconds. I would like to give another huge thank you to Podmatch for sponsoring this episode. Now on to our main episode, and again, you can sign up at joinpodmatch.com/lethal venom to begin your podcasting journey today. Hello everyone, welcome to the Lethal Venom Podcast, the show where I talk about anything I want with the honest to God truth, no lies told. Today I'm joined by Mr. Danny Karon. He is also known as the Lovable Lawyer. He isn't just a lawyer though. He's a three decade legal veteran who has transformed the way people think about the law by making it accessible, understandable, and even enjoyable. A uniquely approachable legal authority, Danny coined the concept of legal wellness, which is encouraging everyday people to maintain their legal health before crisis strikes. Through his Your Lovable Lawyer platform, he breaks down complex legal issues in digestible, engaging videos, what he calls quick shots of legal wellness. He is a great storyteller who simplifies the law with wit and humor. He can tackle everyday legal questions like jaywalking in New York City, how to read your real estate closing statement, or the legality of mask mandates, all while entertaining his audience. He has a compelling brand with narrative power. He launched Your Lovable Lawyer to combat injustice and empower underserved communities with clear, friendly legal insight, making the law both preventative and protective. So, Danny, I appreciate you so much for coming on. I cannot wait for you to share this story and kind of share this message that you would like everyone to know about. So, welcome to the show and thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me. Speaking of sharing, that is good copy. You might need to email me that. You outdid yourself on that intro, so thank you. It's great to be here. It's great to tell my story, send a message, help folks out, do it in a free, fun, and friendly way because there are a lot of legal perils and pitfalls out there that people don't even know to expect. So we're going to talk about some of those and how to kind of avoid that victim mentality and really keep your legal wits about you and avoid getting in trouble in the first place.
So, tell me about how you got the name Your Lovable Lawyer. Tell me a little bit about how this name came to be.
Well, I should say, have done consumer law for about 35 years, mostly consumer class action work, a lot of antitrust, a lot of consumer fraud, wage and hour, securities, and those sorts of things. And I observed during my time in practice that there's this really what I call a bias against access to justice, where people who deserve it the most really tend to get it the least. And what does that mean? That means people don't know they have legal issues. Or if they know they have an issue, they don't know how to resolve it. Or if they know how to resolve it, they don't have anybody to help implement that resolution. They can't find a lawyer. They can't pay for a lawyer. They can't understand a lawyer. I mean, for crying out loud, we got our own language, this crippling legalese, right? Nobody wants to even listen to us. So people are kind of left on their own to flail and squander, their situation and rights. It's just not a good situation for a lot of folks a lot of the time. That was observation number one. Observation number two was gleaned from kind of looking at the daytime internet and TV landscape, and I observed a couple of things there. I saw there's a lot of emotional wellness content out there like Dr. Phil, Dr. Oz, Mel Robbins, talking about how to be safe and sound in your mind and body. I also saw a lot of financial wellness content out there, like Jim Cramer, like Susie Orman, talking about such things as how to set up a 529 for your kid, how to set up a 401k for yourself, those sorts of things. But where concerned that third essential wellness bucket, I'd submit it's legal, which by the way, when it tips, it spills into the other two because you freak out and you go broke. There was nothing there but these kind of trumped up, more exploitative than helpful courtroom shows, which would descend on people after disaster had struck. So they're in court and things are going to crap, and that's the cameras are trained on them. And you don't want to be in court. You want to avoid being in court. And I thought, you know what? What can I do to slide the dial back to help people prevent stepping in shit and maintain their legal health in the same way as they're counseled to maintain their physical health, emotional health, financial health, and so on. So I liken this to kind of like where you go to the doctor to get a physical to keep from getting physically sick. I'm kind of like your legal physical, what you need to keep yourself from getting legally sick. So I put together some videos on kind of evergreen topics like what to do in an auto accident, how to handle a traffic court, why you need a will and a trust, some fun kind of human interest kind of topics like who owns a home run ball? That's a legal issue, and people are wondering about it a couple of seasons ago when Aaron Judge was hitting his 60th or something. Um, how about what not to say online and avoid getting yourself in trouble? Like Amber Heard, she could have used a dose of legal wellness, should have and could have known what not to say to avoid having to pay that judgment to Johnny Depp and those lawyers' bills, which I heard were estimated anywhere between $9 and $15 million. All of that could have been avoided. So put this content together, put it out on the web, and I kind of got noticed a little bit because it's really tough out there to get eyes on. There's so much worthless drivel. I mean, there's reveal videos where somebody gets a new pair of Nikes and people can't help but to watch. There are cooking videos, which are great, but are they going to save your life if you're in an auto accident and you need insurance coverage? Not so much. But I'm competing against all this stuff, but I'm really trying hard. So I started working with some folks to help promote the brand, and that led me to you guys, thankfully. And now we're talking about how to get this message from myself out to your listeners in a way that resonates with them to keep them legally safe in the same manner as I'm describing as it concerns a lot of folks I know, a lot of clients I know, a lot of friends I know, and hopefully, again, your listeners too.
You talk a lot about what legal wellness is and then what exactly it is. Why should the average person care so much about their legal health?
Give an example. And all these examples are 100% true, and most of them involve me. So this is a couple of winters ago. We were in Florida driving, my wife was driving our 2024 car. We had just turned in our 2021 lease to get the 24. And a couple days before going in to the dealer, I called my insurance agent. I said, hey, listen, we're going to be swapping cars. Let's make sure there's seamless coverage. We don't want one glimpse of daylight between coverages because that's the umbrella principle, right? When you don't have the umbrellas when it rains and you don't want to have any gap in coverage. He said, fine. Anyway, 6 months go by. She gets in a crash, and I pick up my phone, go to make a claim on the app, and I can't get any functionality. I call the company. They tell me, we think there's a problem with your coverage. Let's look into it. 3 days later, we get a letter denying coverage. They said you have no coverage on the car because you never called us to tell us you were switching cars. I said, the hell I didn't. I mean, I remember distinctly doing it. I'm the guy who never wants to take a chance, especially as it concerns auto insurance because there's so much at stake there. So I'm freaking out because if you do the math, our car totaled, the other car totaled. There's some injuries, modest, it seems. Lawyers involved. You do the math. That could easily be a $250,000 swing self-pay if you have no coverage. So what did I do? I read the contract. I put together a legal argument. But more provocatively, I put together a factual argument. I pulled the contracts, the insurance contracts, the emails, the declaration pages on the contracts, my cell phone records to make sure that there was a record of my having called the agent on the date I thought I did, held my breath, and sure enough, there was a call from me to him and him back to me on that date. Could only have been to say, hey, listen, make sure there's coverage. but I needed to rule out other possibilities. So I had to do some more sleuth work. It wasn't for my wife's lost watch. It wasn't because we were moving for our homeowner's coverage. It wasn't because she wanted to get coverage for work. I ruled all that stuff out through the documents, put together a 13-page letter supported by about 15 exhibits, sent it to the insurance company. 4 weeks later, I get a phone call. They said two things. One, we're providing you coverage, and two, we're sorry for what we put you through. That is why you need to maintain your legal health. You need to know your documents, know your coverages, know your rights, know you have a stake and a claim and a voice. When they say no, the answer should be yes. Go make it yes and go fix the problem yourself. I could never have found a lawyer to do this. Why? Because you can't get paid as a lawyer 1/3 or a contingency fee of, hey, provide coverage. Forget that. And at 500, $600 an hour, you're upside down. You can't afford a lawyer to maintain this sort of effort. You gotta sometimes do it yourself. And that means knowing you can and knowing where to look. And we're going to talk about, obviously, we're talking about that you can. We're also going to talk about where to look. That, again, is why you need to maintain and pay mind to your legal health.
What are some common legal mistakes people make in everyday life without maybe they don't even realize that they're making mistakes?
I think people don't read their contracts. I think there are three pillars for legal wellness, really. That's number two. Number one, we've alluded to, is to avoid this victim's mindset. You don't need to take it. You don't need to eat shit. You don't need to just take the man's uh, attitude and opinion and conclusion on things. Hey, there's no coverage. We're done. No way. I dug in. Now there's coverage. I don't have to declare personal bankruptcy, for instance. That's a big thing. That was a big win. Number one, avoid a victim mindset. Two, as I alluded to a second ago, read your contracts. People never do. They never ever do. I mean, listen, you're signing up for something like an app or whatever, you're scrolling through, accept, accept, accept. That's called a click-through agreement. They make it look as if you're knowingly buying in because you're actually actively clicking through. And courts sometimes enforce those. A lot of times they enforce them. Sometimes they don't. But if you read your contract, at least you know what's in it and where it could bite you in the rear end. So maybe you can't change it because a lot of times, if not always, cell phone contracts, credit card contracts, ISP contracts, they're what are called adhesion contracts, which mean they're take it or leave it. You have no ability to change them. You're going to go to the cell phone provider and on your phone make a digital change to your contract as you're signing up or on the keypad. It ain't happening. Forget about it. Not going to ever happen. But you know what? You can't go across the street because the other guy's got the same term. They all do. So you're kind of screwed. But if you read your contract, at least you know what the consequences of certain things happening will be. So for instance, if I may, I've got a new book on all these concepts coming out. It's called Your Lovable Lawyer's Guide to Legal Wellness, Fighting Back Against a World That's Out to Cheat You. And it's being released October 21st, and it's got a lot of examples and a lot of readable fun, so to speak, because you got to try to make it fun, right? And entertaining. Examples of what can happen to people, including to me. And here's one as it concerns reading your contracts. It's a case it's called Corwin versus New York Bike Share. I'm stealing a little bit of my thunder, but it's in the book. So you'll see it if you read it. I hope you will. It involved this guy, Corwin, who was renting a bike to bike around New York City. You know, the bike share things you have with the app. You sign up, you get an account, you get a bike, you pick it up, you go. He couldn't change that. There's no way he's going to change that because it's locked in his phone. And he rents the bike. He hits a curb. He takes a header, cracks his head open. He's got all these horrible injuries. He sues New York Bike Share, if I remember the name, and I think I do, for negligence for having negligently maintained the setup where he rented the bike. There shouldn't have been a curb there. So he said, whatever. Well, there was a liability waiver baked into the online application. And it said, if you are injured through our negligence, not our fault. You got nothing on us. Gross negligence, like we go out of our way, that's a different story. You can't excuse that liability. But normal negligence, yes, we're done. He's like, you know what? That's bullshit. I'm gonna go to court. And he did go to court and he lost. Why? Because liability waivers, at least in this instance in New York, are legal. So what could he have done and what should he have done had he known this was in there in a manner that he couldn't change? Because he ain't changing it and he's not going across the street to Acme Bike Share because they're gonna have the same language. You know they are. But you know what? He could have worn a helmet because he could have realized, you know what? If I crack my head open, I'm self-pay because they have no liability as it concerns ordinary negligence. I'd better play it extra safe because I don't want to be out of pocket. And he didn't read it, didn't wear it, and he lost. There's no happy ending to that story, by the way, unless you're New York Bike Share, that is. But That's what comes from not reading contracts, for instance. And it's hard. And I tell you, DocuSign is designed to discourage people from signing contracts. It's so damn easy just to click, 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 initial, cute little cursive font, whatever, you're done. Nobody reads these things. Nobody reads their leases for their apartments. We'll talk about too if you'd like, but you gotta. And when you do, you'll feel that legal empowerment to know what to avoid and what the consequences of your landlord's action, the other vendor's actions are, and yours are. It's just all about legal knowledge, legal awareness, legal wellness.
This has always been a question for me, and I don't know, this would be from if a lawyer would understand this, but why is it from some cases that you see on the news all the time, you have someone that can commit murder for something, and they only get maybe 6 months in jail. But yeah, here's someone that gets arrested for suspicion of a DUI and they get sentenced to 10 years in prison. Why is it some cases like that are more taken more severely than someone like for murder? Because I've always wondered, like, how is it these people get out of jail for, like, if they do commit this huge mass murder, they do this huge shit and they kills multiple people and they get 6 months in jail, but yet here's someone that maybe does littering and they get 5 years in jail.
Well, I mean, I don't know about somebody committing mass murder getting 6 months and somebody littering and getting 5 years. I'm not sure about your premise. If it derives from some facts, then maybe it's worth digging into. But if you're speaking more globally to kind of the lack of uniform um, application of justice, which affects people and victims, I would agree with that to some degree. It's a function of socioeconomic status, your ability to retain counsel, biases in the venue or jurisdiction. That's just part of life. That's baked into the fabric of what we do, whether it's in the context of litigation or hiring for a job or anything. That's just out there. And it's sad and it's too bad. And it's actually one of the themes that spawned my brand because I didn't think it was fair that folks were getting left behind, legally speaking, because the law is, in my estimation, or to my mind, it's a right and not a privilege reserved for those, few folks who've got a lot of money to hire lawyers. Everybody should have access to the law, and if they know a little bit about it themselves, then maybe they can make up for that gap, make up for the fact that they can't find or hire a lawyer because they don't have the money or the aptitude or the time or whatever. So, I mean, I think your observation is spot on, and it's one of the influences for my brand in my book.
Another thing that, people get misconstrued is sometimes, movies and TV shows can either do a good job or a bad job at portraying what it's like to be in a courtroom. And you've mentioned that the law is always often misunderstood. What's some myths that movies and TV shows portray that is genuinely not true about what the general courtroom process is and what how lawyers are perceived on screen?
I'll tell you a couple that come to mind immediately. The first is in every one of these lawyer shows, all the lawyers have their jackets on all day. Let me tell you, you're lucky to be wearing a suit, much less your jacket on. No jackets on ever. So that's a bunch of nonsense. Watch Suits. I think Suits is back on or something, but they're always wearing the jacket. It's ridiculous. But more meaningfully, I guess, is the miscon the fabrication that a case is going to go from beginning through middle to end, especially like a felony murder trial, in 60 minutes. Or actually, really, what, like in 48 minutes of programming because you got the commercials. So, I mean, no, there's no way. I've got cases. Let me think. I'm working, when I get off this podcast, I'm going to turn back to a case that's in year 9. And it's a pretty humdrum case, but it's taken forever. And that's because of the delays and the defense lawyers are slowing things down because they get paid per hour and I get paid per haps. I got to win to get paid and they don't want to get me paid. And you throw in a pandemic and it's ridiculous. So even the most humdrum case can take, at least in the class action world, which is where I operate, can take several years. So the idea that anything is going to fly through jury verdict, in 48 minutes, forget about it.
Yeah, I think the only show that depicts that general aspect of it is Law and Order, because sometimes what they can do is at the bottom they'll say day 85, day 90, and I'm just like, because I'm like you, some cases take years, and I'm like, oh my parents wanted me to be a lawyer so bad because I could lie and argue so well. But I thought, um, no, because they do a lot of stuff that I would not be able to do. It's
Well,
like I don't have the patience and the time to be able to sit there for like a year and do this case. And I can lie very well, but not at like this professional level where it depends on someone's life. No, no. I was like,
well,
that's
I
too
don't know.
stressful
I
for
don't know that
me.
I wouldn't say that we lie. I mean, everyone's doing their best to tell the truth. It's just a matter of how you tell it. It's a function of really telling the truth in a productive, effective, persuasive way. And if that kind of shades things one way or another, for instance, I was talking to a client about an auto accident earlier today, actually. And she said, I think I was tired when it happened because she's being sued. And I said, do you remember that you were tired? Well, I don't know. And I said, well, you're tired a lot, right? Yeah. So if you're asked that, you could easily and honestly say, was I tired? I was no more tired than I am any other time. No. So it's just a matter of how you tell the truth. So that's kind of one observation. Relatedly, I remember this is when my daughter was, God, she's 27 now. She's probably 5 or 6. We were in the kitchen, me and my wife were in the kitchen, our house, and I was getting dressed down for something I'd done or whatever, which is no surprise. And my wife, storms out and leaves me kind of there in shambles, just kind of stewing over what I'd done. And I feel a tug on my pant leg, and I look down at my daughter, and I said, "Oh, hey, what's going on?" She looks up at me, and I look down at her, and she says, Dad, I know why you're such a good lawyer. I'm like, why is it like, I could use a pick me up. I'm like, okay, why is that? And she goes, because you're such a good arguer. I don't know if she's being sarcastic or not. And I thought about that, like you were saying, a good fighter, a good arguer. And I knelt down and looked at her. I said, sweetie, you know what? If you ask me, being a good lawyer isn't about being a good arguer. Being a good lawyer is about being a good problem solver. Because we are vested with the privilege and the honor and the opportunity to help people out of their jams and help them solve their problems every day. And we're all working on shared problems, really, defendants and plaintiffs. We're just kind of considering them and entering the problem from through different portals, from different places and directions, but it's a shared problem just the same. And too few lawyers appreciate that. They want to fight with each other rather than work together to solve the problem. And a big function of that is generated by the fact that defense lawyers get paid upwards of 1,000 or more dollars per hour, and they want to keep churning and churning and churning these cases so they can make their money. And I can understand that because I've done defense work too, believe me. But at some point, you've got to come together and get the problem solved to get it done. And that's what I think a good lawyer is a good problem solver.
Yeah, I think it takes a lot of skill to be able to be a lawyer. But that was just one of the big aspects there. My parents were like, you should be a lawyer, you're good at arguing. I said, well,
Mhm.
that's for petty stuff. This is for more serious stuff. And y'all don't want me to do that. Um, you've built your career a lot around class action law. What's been one case or experience that you've had that's really changed the way you see justice?
You know, a case that made a big difference to me was this price fixing case involving LCD flat panel displays, which are the computer screens used in the laptops that I'm using and I suspect you're using, TVs, desktop computers, and all the big companies make them, all the ones you'd expect and have heard of, and then some others that you haven't heard of, all out of Taipei. Well, there's Taipei. Well, it's Taiwan, Korea, and Japan. So for about 12 years, they were fixing prices, meaning agreeing with each other to jack up prices, to keep the market prices high, to sell off their inventory, as they're getting into new technology. And you can't do it, it's illegal. They got caught by the US Department of Justice, the European Union, the the Japanese antitrust enforcers, New Zealand, Australia. I mean, worldwide, they got busted across the board. And that case took about 12 years to resolve. And it was on behalf of people like us who bought these um, LCD flat panel display containing products, and we paid more for them than we should have because of this price fix. It kept the prices of these screens high, which make up a big chunk of these products. And that case settled for about like $2 billion, I think. And to see how everything worked on literally a global scale, to see the dollars involved, to see the hubris and the nerve that the companies had to keep this case going for as long as they did when there were guilty pleas up and down and all this great criminal liability evidence, but that didn't make them step up and own it. So everything wrong about about your upbringing that you would think was baked into that case. What I mean is, you tell your kids, you know what, you got to take responsibility, you got to own it, you got to do the right thing. They would do none of that. Why? Because that's business. In business, it's okay not to do the right thing. Personally, you probably ought to, but these guys are telling their kids one thing probably and doing another as it concerns this case, which is why it took 12 years. But we got it done, and the greatest fun and privilege was to put money back into the hands of folks who deserved it for having gotten screwed by this series of crimes, including my clients. And I was able to get them checks back and they felt great about it. And that's a cool case. And that made a difference for me, not just conceptually or emotionally, because I saw how everything worked. It was my first really, really big case, but also it allowed me to go out on my own. I started my own firm after that because I really wanted to do things my way and add value in the way that I saw fit and that made the greatest, best difference to people. And I took off and started my own firm, and it's been 11 years in October, 11 years next month, and I'm still around. So I think that's not half bad.
I can imagine that during this your whole trial journey that you've experienced some serious, probably serious cases of, whether it's maybe a shooting, if it's huge tax frauds or anything. But I can only imagine that it also comes with some dumb cases as well. It's like, why are you even in court for this? It's like, why do you take it? Has there been cases where you've had to go and represent someone and it's like the most the most stupidest reason, and you're just like, you're wasting my time. You're just wasting your own time. Can you share a
Mhm.
case where it's been like, why am I here?
Yeah. Um, well, first thing is, I would never take one of those cases, so I can't describe it from the plaintiff's side, but I can describe it from the defendant's side because I mentioned earlier that I do some defense work too. This was a defense case involving the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA. There are firms out there that troll websites looking for ADA indiscretions where they are not set up strictly as they're supposed to under the Americans with Disabilities Act. So they might not have for a blind person something that's blind accessible in all respects, or for someone who's deaf. If this wasn't a hearing case, mine was a blindness case, so I can't really speak to it. But presumably, it's the same type of approach as it concerns audio. So anyway, my client had a website where he's selling like some health care equipment, and he was setting it up, and he didn't have a lot of the functionality built in that the ADA required. So this law firm out east is in the business of, as are a lot of them are, trolling websites to find problems. They found this problem. I know that they went out and they reverse engineered this case, meaning they found a plaintiff, a blind person who I suspect they used for a lot of cases to get on the website to have this alleged problem, and that spawned or generated that was the basis for a class action complaint. And it was ridiculous because there was no injury there because the product that the guy wanted was out of stock anyway. So even had he been able to navigate the site, he couldn't have bought the product. So on a strict textual level under the ADA, it was a little bit iffy, but on a practical level, the product wasn't even there anyway. So who gives a crap, you know? So this buddy of mine called me and asked if I could help defend his friend against this class action, which that gets your attention, a federal class action. So I took a look at him like, this is bullshit. So I said to him, we could either pay this guy off for like 5,000 bucks because he's a shakedown artist. I mean, they work on volume, these guys, these troller kind of law firms. And you have to wonder how much of it goes back to their actual client. I suspect not a lot, but I can't know. I can't know. So I said, we're probably going to get shaken down for between 5 and 10 grand, or we can hunker down and file a motion or petition with the federal judge to dismiss the case. Because if you give in and you negotiate with these guys and you're in this business, they'll keep watching for you and they'll get you again and again and again because they know that you're susceptible to payment. So he said, you know what? Let's move to dismiss. I said, good for you. Let's do it. So I put together a whole petition to dismiss the case. Um, we filed it. It was too much work for the other side because they weren't bargaining. They weren't banking on this. They were banking on just a quick in and out. And the lawyer called up and said, could I have an extension? We're coming up on the holidays. I said, boy, I got to tell you, man, I give you one as a professional courtesy, but my client's pretty pissed. He's tough, and he said, no, no extensions. So he said, you know what? Then we're just gonna, what do you say to $1,000? I say I'll talk to my client. So I talked to my client. He said, you know what? To get out of this for $1,000, that I can do. So I said, yes, we'll do it. Never heard back from the guy. He just he just walked away. So that's a stupid case. There's a lot of stupid cases out there. Now, there's other stupid cases, for instance, are let me think. You know that Subway 12-inch, the Subway footlong case from got to be a decade ago now, where some kid in Australia posted on YouTube, or I think it was Australia. He measured a Subway sub. It measured 11 inches. It was advertised as 12 inches. There's an inch shortage. If you divide that across the cost of the sub, it's like however much. It spawned a bunch of class actions. There were these Starbucks iced coffee cases, where if you go to Starbucks and you look at the board up top and it says, tall 8 ounces or whatever, and you get an iced coffee, it's actually only like maybe 5 ounces of fluid, but it goes up to the 8 ounce mark because of the displacement from the ice. Well, there were cases that said, hey, listen, I paid for 8 ounces of fluid. I got five, let's make it a class action. Like, that is ridiculous. I got presented with that one too. And I said, no way. How about slack fill cases? Those are cases where I wish I could grab it, but a box of cereal. There's this headspace on top. Parmesan cheese, that's the big one. Kraft Parmesan cheese. The can is like this, but the cheese only goes up to here. There's this headspace. There are federal regulations in the Code of Federal Regulations, the CFR, that allow for what's called slack fill. That's what it is, and how much you can have. And people say, hey, listen, I'm going to make a federal case of it when they're actually being charged by weight, not by volume. Stupid, stupid, stupid cases. Make all of us look bad, piss off the Chamber of Commerce, piss off Congress, result in bad laws, making it tougher for consumers to protect themselves and for well-behaving companies to compete with cheaters who, when there's no access to justice, the cheaters run off and steal market share and sales and profits, making it tougher for the well-behaving companies as well as the real victims who don't have laws left to enforce their true class action rights. So that's what comes from bad and stupid cases.
Has there been a We're gonna go for what you said on that. I'm surprised people have not come about the huge chip bag dilemma. Because if people are gonna get so mad about Parmesan cheese have like this huge gape in it, why are there not more cases about chips? The
People
fact
do bitch about chips. You go talk to your friends. God damn, those things half full. Well, yeah, if it's full, they're gonna break for crying out loud. You're paying based on weight, not on the size of your packaging. I'm sorry, get over it.
Well, I know that people complain about it, but I just mean so much the fact that they took it to court.
Oh,
Yeah,
they
I
take it to
just like,
court. This shit's in court all over the place. If it weren't in court, if these cases weren't so prevalent, there wouldn't have been such anti-consumer legislation passed over the past, say, decade and a half, including what's called the Class Action Fairness Act, which took class actions out of state courts, put them into federal courts, presumably where there'd be tougher judges on class actions. There wouldn't be laws enforcing mandatory arbitration, it's called, which is to say you can't take your case against your cell phone provider and put it in court. You got to put it in mandatory arbitration, thereby losing your Seventh Amendment right to a jury trial because it's simply in the contract, and that should be a business to business issue. But the Supreme Court in this Concepcion versus AT&T case made it a consumer issue, which is to say mandatory arbitration clauses are enforceable against everyday consumers who don't even know what the hell they are. That's not okay. But that's all a function of bad plaintiffs' lawyers suing bad cases, pissing off the chamber, pissing off Congress, and bad laws go through, which ruin it for good companies. That was my point of a second ago.
there have been a lot of recent high profile legal cases in the news that people tend to interpret the wrong way. Can you give an example of maybe a high profile case that people get interpret the wrong way, and what should we know from the case that people are interpreting
Mm,
wrong?
well, you just proposed that there are a lot of cases in the news that people interpret the wrong way. None's come to mind. Do you have any that you want to identify and we can talk about them? That was your premise.
Well, I know a lot of people are caught up on this Justin Baldoni, the whole "It Ends With Us" case that's been going on for a year. People tend to think that it's his fault that he's done it. People tend to she's at fault from it. What's
Oh,
your
the Blake
opinion
Lively,
on?
Justin Baldoni case?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's been
We can talk
like
about that a little bit. Sure. I did some news hits on that. Um, you know, listen, it's also a function of society and a lot of, I don't know to what extent like the Me Too movement is bleeding into it, but I know there's a lot of talk about how, he's a creep and a lech and he's all that sort of stuff. Um, when I took a closer look, I remember coming across some commentary. Who knows if it's true or not, suggesting that she invited him into her trailer to rehearse lines and this and that, and he came in a towel. I forget. I'm not getting it right exactly. But, people should be a little more reluctant to pop off and state opinions about stuff without knowing the facts because this whole business is fact driven. And in a day and age where people are questioning the facts and everybody, claims to have some twisted ownership of the truth, at least in a way that serves their narrative, until you objectively understand what the facts are, which, survive cross-examination and documentary proof and all that stuff, I don't think anybody even deserves to have an opinion. And there's far too much of it. Everybody thinks they're the expert, but if you actually push back a little bit, nobody's got a basis for anything. Most of what they're saying, at least in my experience.
to kind of wrap things up a little bit here. I think this is a very important question that a lot of people could probably get a lot of good insights of. When should someone actually hire a lawyer, and when is it appropriate for them to maybe tackle it and handle it themselves?
Well, it's often not a choice. If the dollars aren't there, you're not going to get a lawyer to step up and help you. Why? For two reasons. One, if it's a contingency fee case, meaning like if you're driving down the highway and you see those billboards and all the lawyers say no fee unless you win, or, um, we've recovered this much for victims or whatever. Those are often their personal injury lawyers. And they're getting a contingency fee, meaning their fee is contingent upon winning. It's usually a percentage. Well, it's always a percentage. It's usually about 33 and a third, maybe sometimes 40%. So if your case isn't big enough to make it worth their while, because they're partnering with you in the process, you really have a complete alignment of interest. They want to make as much money as they can for themselves, which derives from making as much money for you as they can. So for instance, I had a friend literally week before last. Her mom fell. Her mom's in the hospital, and when they were examining her, they found a wire in her knee. And that's because she'd had some device implanted in her knee several years ago, and it was explanted because it wasn't working, but the wire broke off apparently and stayed in her knee. And now because of how she fell, the wire's pushing against something that's going to cause her all these problems. And my friend said, does she have a medical malpractice case? And I'm like, you know what? I don't know what the standard of care or duty the doctor had at the time was. I don't know whether it was supposed to come off, whether um, whether the doctor the doctor acted with sufficient carelessness this many years later, whether there's a statute of repose or limitations it's called that cut off the claim, and also even if there were a claim on liability, it's called, or fault, the second part of every case is damages. And are there sufficient damages to make it worth an attorney's while? You've got like an 85-year-old woman who's got some knee pain. The case isn't worth much. It sounds really cruel and insensitive, but it's got like negligible value. You don't want to be a plaintiff with a high value case. You don't want to be the plaintiff on the billboard on the side of the highway where you say, my lawyer got me $990,000. Why? Because you do that, I mean, you're fucked up. I mean, you are a real mess. The reason they have the head shot from here up is probably because they're in a wheelchair. Or maybe they have no legs. That is a bad plaintiff to be. So you got to have real damages to make it really worth it for a lawyer. So my buddy, whom I called because I don't do PI work, said, out of the box. He's like, no damages, forget it, not interested. Okay. So that's a case where you're never going to be able to hire a lawyer if you want to. So what do? You can, a lot of the things that I propose in my book. You can write a letter. You can call the Better Business Bureau. You can call the state attorney general's office. Try to exact your pound of flesh that way. Make it a class action if it's a small value claim. That's what I do. The flat panel TV or flat panel display case, everybody was out of pocket like 25 bucks. You put a lot of 25s together, you're talking $2 billion. So there's a lot that goes into this, but it's often not a function of what you want. It's a function of what the lawyer will do for you.
No, I think a lot of this stuff is so important to everyone. And, hopefully everyone doesn't have to go through the whole lawyer process. They don't have to go through the whole justice system where they have to go to court. Because I can only imagine the sheer amount of drain it puts on you. Because some cases take years to finish, and, you never know. Luckily, they might solve it in one day. I mean, you might just get
Yeah.
lucky on that.
No,
But
there's no luck in this business.
but majority of the time it lasts for a good while. So I think that you give such great advice, and I think that I like how you have accompanied the name. Most lawyers could get on here and just be blunt honest about it, and they just tell it. You share it in such a unique way to where it makes it to where people don't feel as intimidated from it as like what most how most lawyers would present themselves as. And I really like the brand that you have for this, and you have such a good way of saying it with urgency, but you have it in a way where it's like people can be like, okay, and they don't feel like overwhelmed with it. And so I think a lot of people should take lessons from this. But I'm not I'm not a brainiac in law. I didn't study law or nothing. So if my listeners are hearing it and they have additional questions that they need, maybe they have just additional questions for you about anything that they have going on, what's the best way that they can contact you? And most importantly, where can they, if people are interested in the book as well, where can they find the book and purchase the book if they would like to learn more?
Sure. My email is danny@yourlovablelawyer.com. I'm always eager to hear from folks. And I try to reply to everybody because everybody matters. And in a world of kind of mass-produced everything, for instance, I've got a case, it's this vo ugly voyeurism case involving this high school and this girl's locker room, and we're talking to people and trying to get interest. And if anybody ever emails me, I always email them back because every voice and every experience and every victim matters. And if you have a problem, you matter too. So that's really important to keep in mind. You don't hear a lot of, never mind lawyers, a lot of people say that. But you asked about the book. If you go to Amazon and you just in the search magnifying glass, the search bar, type in your lovable lawyer, it comes right up and it's available, like I said, for pre-sale. They're releasing it October 21st. I didn't expect to get my copies ahead of time, but I am actually going to the post office today to send some out, including to my mom and dad, because my mom said we need more. She's giving away to friends. I'm like, you can't have them buy it. I mean, come on, really? I worked 4 years on this thing. She, no, you're not gonna have my friends buy this. Okay, fine. So they're gonna get the free books. But I would love to see folks enhance their legal wellness, their legal aptitude, their legal awareness, their access to justice in a way that this is the stuff that the lawyers don't want you to know. And I think a DIY law degree is essential, no different than you'll learn a bit about finances, you learn a bit about your emotional health, you take care of your physical health. You take care of your home. You take care of your pets. You should take care of your legal health too. And I relate this to my kids all the time. And you know what? They listen to it like with one ear because if it's coming from me, forget about it. But when they do stuff, I'm like, hey man, that's like what I said. I kind of keep it to myself, but I kind of know a little bit too. And it's really cool because you want to stay out of trouble. And there's so many examples I get into in the book involving my kids uh, and stuff that's happened to them because I'm trying to get on the college university circuit to relate these themes to kids who are out there in the wild for the first time, to sign and screw up their own leases, to write their own contracts for other stuff, to not read what they should, and and then campus themes like they're drinking on campus even though it's illegal. I'm sorry, you're at school, but it's still illegal. And maybe they're in a fraternity and they're hazing. Bad idea. Don't do that. I mean, stuff like that. Things that you don't get this guidance. Why? Because nobody's parents are lawyers to speak of. everybody's emotionally dialed in, or should be. Everybody wants to teach you hygiene as a kid going to college, but the law thing, I hope I can help.
And I will put all of his links in the description box below as well about his website, his social media accounts, and his book. The book does come out October 21st. So by the time this
Yeah.
episode comes out, it actually will already be out and available. So it's out now for when
Hmm.
the episode comes out, you'll be able to
Well
get it.
put.
And if you would like to maybe follow me on social media as well. But go back to him. I'll put all his links down there as well. His books, the book, website, social media, all will be in the description box for easy access for you guys. So it's not so you don't have trouble finding him online. So it'll all be down there. Feel free to follow me online as well. Instagram and TikTok. I'm Lethal Venom Podcast on there. Feel free to follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube as well. It's Noah's Podcast. And feel free to follow the podcast wherever you get your podcast from. I'm available on all the major platforms: Spotify, Apple, Amazon, iHeartRadio, YouTube, Pandora. Feel free to follow that on any of those platforms so you get notified when new episodes come out. And again, a huge thank you to Danny for coming on here and sharing some great advice with my listeners. Hopefully, you all learned some stuff today. Um, everyone, I hope you all have a great rest of your day and week. Be safe out there, and I will catch you on the next episode of Lethal Venom.